and welcome once again to Snow Country Stories Japan. I'm your host, Peter Carnell, a freelance tour guide and writer based in Nagano, and this is a podcast all about life and travel in Japan's legendary Yukiguni. I like to bring you diverse stories on the pod that capture the essence of life in the snow country, and of course, a big part of that story is Japan's wonderful ski resorts. We've covered the resorts of Madarao and Myoko Kogen in earlier episodes, and today we continue exploration of Japan's ski and snowboard culture by heading to Myoko Kogen in Niigata Prefecture. In this episode, I speak with Billy Halloran, a snowboarder and operator of the Greenhouse, a self-contained lodge tucked away in a gorgeous little pocket of Myoko. Myoko takes its name from Mount Myoko, a volcano standing 2,450 meters or 8,051 feet in height in the southern tip of Niigata, nearby the Sea of Japan. The mountain is a major feature of the wider Myoko Togachi-Renzan National Park, and as always, there's a map on the episode page showing you where Myoko is, so make sure to check that out to get your bearings as to where in the snow country we are today. As we discussed during the interview, Myoko's location blesses it with, or subjects it to, I guess it depends on your point of view, extremely heavy snowfall each winter. I'll leave it to Billy to discuss just how much snow. This is true snow country, and I think it's safe to say Billy sees the snow as a blessing and a way of life. Often referred to as Myoko Kogen, there are 5 ski resorts in the area: Akakura Onsen, Akakura Kanko, Ikenotaira, Suginohara, and Seki Onsen, all of which we go into detail about, along with the resort of Lotte Arai, which is technically not part of Myoko but in the area, and is worth considering if you're heading to Myoko to ski or snowboard. So we cover a lot in this episode, and I think you'll find what Billy has to say really worthwhile. Links to each ski resort are on the episode page of the Snow Country Stories Japan website. Our interview was recorded in the Greenhouse. It's a lovely, comfortable lodge in a picturesque little village. We'll set up as Billy explains for group bookings. We discuss the guest house, backcountry, and more in the second half of the interview. I discovered Billy through his film As Above, So Below, produced by filmmaker Gordy Duff. It's beautifully shot and I think shows off what life in the deep snow of Myoko is like, and captures what is so special about Myoko and the snow country in general. I've included the video on today's episode page and a link to it in the show notes. Make sure to check it out if you're considering Myoko Kogen as your next winter destination in Japan. That film will lock down the decision for you. For anyone wanting to get in touch with Billy, you can do so via Instagram by searching The Greenhouse Myoko, or via the Tanoshi Tours website. That's spelt TANOSHIITOURS.com. Now on with today's episode. I hope you enjoy. My guest on the podcast today is snowboarder Billy Halloran. Billy, we're sitting in your very lovely lodge, the Greenhouse in Myoko Kogen. So how are you doing today?
Hey, Peter. I'm good. Thanks, mate, for having me on board today.
Thank you for making time. I understand you're in the process of just getting ready for the season to come.
Yep. Things are coming up very quickly here in the lead up for winter.
So, as I mentioned, we're in Myoko. Can you just describe to listeners, where is Myoko in relation to, Tokyo, other parts of Japan?
So, Myoko is in Niigata Prefecture. We're about 3.5 hours northwest of Tokyo, and we're bordering the Nagano Prefecture. And we're very close to the coastline here, about 50 minutes from Joetsu coastline. We have 5 ski resorts here on Mount Myoko, and we have one of the deepest snowfalls in Japan, averaging about 14 meters per season.
Yeah, now I'm happy you jumped straight into it, because when we're talking about Myoko, it is really about the winters here, and the winters here are pretty extreme. Can you what's life like here in the winter?
Very busy when it comes to snow clearing. When we get into January, we can see a lot of snowfall. Definitely clearing a couple times a day. And if anyone's heard about, not this season just been, but the previous one, they had 22 meters of snowfall, with most people clearing about 4 to 5 hours per day.
Yeah. Now, when you say that, like it sounds like you're making it up, right? When you say those snow totals, and that's what I thought before I first moved to Niigata, which is the first place I lived in the snow country. But then you get here and you have your first winter, and you realize people are telling the truth. So, what's it like living amongst that much snow?
Personally, I love it, but it's nice to walk outside in the morning and see, sometimes see a metre of snowfall, but you've got a bit of work ahead of you before you can get out and get on with your day. And obviously it's very special to have a lot of snowfall here when that's the main reason why people are coming to a place like Myoko to get out there and be able to experience some proper powder skiing and snowboarding.
This is true snow country out here. And one of the reasons there is so much snow is Japan's winter weather comes across the Sea of Japan, which we're not very far from. It's the other side of the mountain, right?
Yes.
And so it builds up. It originates in Siberia and China, and that cold air comes across, picks up the moisture over the sea, and then basically the first mountain it hits is Myoko, right?
Yep.
And it just dumps.
Yeah. Often, sometimes too much.
Yeah, you've had that experience. Like you just think like that's enough.
Yeah, I've in previous years I've had up to a metre and a half of snow, and you go to get out and go snowboarding, and you're like, there's too much snow to get a track down. Yeah. But I'm never really complaining about it too much.
Complain too much. So originally, where are you from, and how did you end up here?
I'm from Auckland, New Zealand. I've grew up countryside in just south of Auckland, and then I spent the better part of 10 years working at sea as a ship's officer. I was second mate working abroad, Europe, America, the Middle East. But I did my first trip to Japan in 2013, and I fell in love with it. That was originally in Hakuba, when things were a little bit different back then. It was a bit more quiet. But I came back a few years after that, and I started daydreaming about what life in Japan would be like and having a business. And I ended up here because I wanted to escape what most people would experience of a hustle and bustle of normal life, and I wanted some serenity out in the countryside.
Yeah, it's kind of one of the motivations for this podcast. As I mentioned, it's a little bit to talk about travel and give people the information they need to come and visit, but also to promote this place as a place to come and live. Because I think the lifestyle out here is just second to none, mate. It's fantastic. Would you agree with that? Like, how are you finding life out here?
Oh, I love it. No traffic out here. Very simple life out here. Just being surrounded by nature, and also a lot of like-minded people who have come here for similar reasons, and just want the simplicity of, for myself, being in the mountains and having Mount Myoko at the doorstep.
Yeah, it's hard to beat. And how do you find it as a foreigner moving into these? Because these are small communities. How do you find that experience?
Yeah, life as a foreigner, it's a little bit, there's a bit of a language barrier there's not much English-speaking people in Myoko as opposed to somewhere like Hakuba. And the people are slowly getting used to foreigners being in the area. And we're also slowly having the foreign community growing here in Myoko, which is quite nice having other foreigners around. But it's also nice because it's very Japanese still, and it forces us to learn to speak the language, which I'm slowly doing. And also we have to exist in the Japanese community as opposed to going off on our own and having our own bubble foreign community, which I think is a good thing.
I think my experience is these places, if you come in, again, with the right attitude, just want to be work with the community, usually you're totally accepted.
Absolutely.
Now, you've already mentioned, Billy, that Myoko Kogen obviously is made up of 5 different ski resorts, and I think most people listening today are probably going to be interested to hear about those resorts. So
sure.
Can we jump onto those? I just want to get your thoughts about the positives of each and what stands out about each.
Yep.
So of those 5, the largest of them is Akakura Onsen, which is connected to Akakura Kanko. So why don't we start with Onsen, just to give people an idea, and tell me if this sounds about correct. Akakura Onsen, decent size. It's about 17 courses serviced by 14 lifts. I'm just going to give the stats.
Yep.
Situated between 650 to 1,200 metres, so quite low. It only offers around 550 meters of vertical, and the longest ski run there is only 3 kilometers, so quite short. How would you rate Akakura Onsen?
I think it's a brilliant resort for people who are staying in Akakura area, especially for families and people who may be learning to ski or snowboard. It's a very short walk from town. You don't need any public transport to get to the resorts, and they do offer night skiing as well there during the winter. I haven't been night skiing there yet myself because I'm normally exhausted from going out and riding during the day, but I haven't spent an awful lot of time at Onsen because it is of a lower pitch and slope, so great for learners. I think and also it has the exit routes from some other things from the backcountry areas from the Kanko side.
And you hit on something really important there that I should have mentioned. Akakura Onsen is connected to the main village here in Myoko. So there's different accommodation areas around all the ski resorts, but Akakura Onsen is a hot spring village, which is the main area. So you're going to find the most accommodation options in that area.
Yes, you'll find a lot of ryokan accommodation businesses in town, and also quite a decent variety of onsen in town, which is the after skiing and snowboarding or in the morning, and also a lot of food options, which is growing. There's growing options there.
Yeah, nightlife around there
that's definitely the place to be when it comes to nightlife in town. There's a few bars going on and a few nice hotels in town which actually have bars in them as well, and some other events going on throughout the winter.
But at Akakura or Myoko in general, it's not Hakabara, it's not Nozawa. It's not a pumping nightlife.
No, not at all. not like what you might find in those resorts that you mentioned.
Yeah.
It's very like speakeasy bars going on,
which is a positive, right?
I think so. It's not like other areas where you could come and very easily be out till all hours of the morning. There is a couple of bars like that in Akakura, but most places would be shutting sort of early in the scheme of things, so people can get out and get after it on the slopes the next day.
And so Akakura Onsen connects to Akakura Kanko, which is a separate resort, but they are connected, and it's one pass covers the whole mountain.
Yes.
Kanko is a bit smaller, is my understanding, about 10 runs serviced by gondola and 6 lifts. It's situated between 740 to 1,500 meters, so that's 760 meters of vertical, with a slightly longer run at 4.5. Now, for most visitors who are going to go, they're going to go between the two resorts. But that side of the resort, how would you rate Kanko?
I really rate Kanko because it's on the steeper side of things, and they have some very easily accessible tree runs there. The piste runs are I find a little bit narrow, but it does have the gondola, and there's the high speed 4, which will get you into the easily accessible tree runs, and it's got some great powder riding there, especially when it's storming. It's very fun to be ripping down the main trail and riding pow. And also, if it's not a powder day, you've got a pretty great terrain park. If you into learning how to get off the ground and hitting jumps or rails, it's a pretty good spot for that as well. But I'd say Kanko, as opposed to Onsen, is a little bit more difficult, and you would need to be of a higher ability in your skiing or snowboarding. Yeah,
because when you talk about the tree riding out there, like kind of what level is it suited to? You want to be advanced or intermediate, all right? Or?
I would say you would need to be intermediate to advanced to ride a lot of the sections of the tree riding there, and also have a bit of experience in that aspect itself of riding deep snow, because Kanko does get very deep snow.
Yeah, I was actually going to think, because I think when we're talking about Kanko, if you go right, I forget the chairlift, it takes you right to the top, and then you come off to the right, there's the trees there.
Yes.
I've been caught out there before with too much snow, and just, not
yes.
Really. Totally.
It can be very deep out there. And you also, if you are going out on those places, then need to know a little bit of a lay of the land so you can get yourself out of bother if you do.
So that's Akakura, Onsen and Kanko. The next resort along from those is Ikenotaira.
Yeah.
which again is a smaller resort. It's a long, narrow resort, about only 10 courses, but very long courses, and serviced by 6 lifts. It's located between also around 760 meters to 1500, which again, decent vertical of 740. And according to the stats, official longest run is 4 kilometers. That sounds a little bit short to me. It's got some quite nice long runs. Ike.
Yeah, I think they feel longer there because the mountain flows very nicely.
Yeah.
And it's a great place for people to be learning as well, much like Onsen, but I think you have a better pitch there to be able to keep your speed up.
Yep.
And I would say it's a great place if people haven't had the experience in riding tree, like doing powder tree riding. It would be a great place to start.
That's actually where I first did. Yep. It's really mellow.
Very mellow.
You can keep your speed up. The trees are nicely spaced.
Yeah.
It's just, it's a perfect place for it.
Yeah, it'd be awesome to go there. And also a great spot for families as well.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the mountains where you can expect the least amount of crowds. And they've also got a few food options in the area as well for after and before. And also there's a bit of infrastructure going in there with a few other food options.
Yeah. Generally, there needs to be a lot more infrastructure going. As we were talking about before we started chatting, the one drawback of Ike is the chairlifts are painfully slow.
Yeah.
Don't know when they were put in.
It is that first double chair is pretty slow, and you'll definitely get to know the person pretty well on the chairlift.
So keep that in mind. Yeah. Actually, one of the big positives of, actually all the resorts here in general, but especially like Ikenotaira, during the week, there's no one there.
No one there at all. No,
so when the snow is big, it's just amazing.
And also one thing I really like about Ike, I ended up there later in the season this year because we had a very consistent snowfall in Japan. It wasn't the deepest year last season, but I didn't go and ride Ike on a powder day, which I had in previous years. And I ended up there in the spring, and they've got, again, I ride a lot of park, but if it's not power, I'll be going and riding jumps and that, but they have a really fun terrain park. It actually used to be one of the most well-known terrain parks in Japan, but the guys do a really good job of keeping it super creative and also very friendly to people learning that stuff. So when we kind of get on the tail end of winter here, there's still that element that Myoko has on offer, and Ike is really fun for that.
And that hits on another really important point. Glad you said that. Actually, one of the other reasons I like coming here is you always get noticed. Because, I mean, there are foreigners around, there's plenty, but it's not like Hakaba and these other places that people do notice you. A lot of locals here, and usually you get into conversations, people are interested in why you're here, how you found it. Really good atmosphere.
I find it really unique on that aspect because I started spending more time here about 5 years ago and then moved here after spending winters in Hakaba. But when you start meeting people who are, Japanese and a part of the community here, they're very inclusive, and they're very interested in as to why you're here, and they want to get you involved in events, and they can see that you will like the sport and they want you to be a part of it with them, which is really special.
Yeah, I totally agree. That takes us to the next of the resorts, Suginohara. And we're very near Suginohara here in the greenhouse, right? You said it literally, how far up the road?
A couple 100 meters up the road to the east. So we got a bit of a steep climb, but we can walk to the groomer in about 7 minutes. And then that'll have a ride down to the romance chair, which again is a little bit of a slow chair, but and it is quite romantic because you're on there for a while. But it'll
pick and choose your company.
And then that takes you up to be able to ride down to the gondola and jump on the gondola.
But that means at the end of the day, you're skiing or you're boarding straight back to the lodge, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome.
So we're ski out, but we're not skiing. But we can. We're very, very easy to ride home.
Suginohara has 16 courses serviced by 1 gondola and 4 lifts.
situated between 731 to 1855 meters, which is a bit of a surprise, meaning that it's higher than any point in Hakuba, any chairlift. Really surprising, right? But Sugi's big claim to fame is one of the longest ski runs in Japan, at around
8.5 Ks.
Yeah. So how would you describe Sugi as a resort?
Yeah, it definitely holds a special place in my heart. I've always been an avid Sugi rider. I think it's the best resort in Myoko for sure, because it has some of the best like piste riding, I think, that really links up nicely together. And also it has very accessible terrain. Obviously within people's experience and knowledge of where to go or not go, it has some really good tree riding that flows nicely. And also we have at the top of the quad chair, we have the access to go further up the ridgeline and ride into the crater of Mount Myoko.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. Something you recommend?
Absolutely. If people have the experience and that proper avalanche training and safety equipment, I would definitely recommend getting up to the top of Myoko. And if you haven't been before, then go with someone that has been or a guide. Because the riding is phenomenal. It has northerly facing slopes into the crater of Mount Myoko, and also the views are spectacular. One of the best things about Sugi, well, plenty of positives about Sugi, but you can actually see Mount Fuji on a clear day.
Really?
Yeah, just under 200 kilometers away, but you can see it from the top of the gondola, and also, the best views are from the ridgeline of nuts. Mount Myoko.
I wasn't aware of that. Sugi also is a very scenic resort, and really well suited again to kind of all levels, I think, especially families, beginners, because they're nice, wide, long runs. So if you are learning, it's rarely that busy, especially in weekdays. It's going to be nice and quiet. Great place for families.
Yeah, we've got actually that's one of the reason why I like it most, because it suits all abilities from beginner to advanced, and especially on a POW day, like it's super friendly if families are or people are learning to ride POW and you're just being on the trail. It's a very nice pitch. So it is steeper than Ikenotaira, but I would say it would be the next step for people who are trying to ride deep snow, especially on a day that it's storming. It's a very fun resort to be at when it's the piste is filling up quickly.
And I'm a big fan of the gondola there, because having spoken about how slow the chairs are at Ike, when you get on the gondola, quite a long gondola at Sugi to go up, it's actually nice and quick, and the lift infrastructure around the resort is relatively okay.
It's pretty good. It flows pretty nicely, I would say. Off the top of the gondola is a plenty long enough run, but if you go from the top, that's when you can hit your 8.5K.
The final of the official ski resorts of Myoko Kogen is Seki Onsen, which is actually above Akakura Onsen. Seki's the smallest of the five, very small. I think it only has officially 4 courses and 2 lifts. Is that correct? I've never boarded there myself. Located between 900 to 1,210 meters, so just over 300 meters of vertical, and the longest official course of 1.5 kilometers.
Yeah.
Now, so from that, Seki sounds like you could give it a miss, but how would you rate it?
Seki, awesome place for sure. It's definitely a resort that you need to work on timing there, obviously, to make sure that you have enough snow base and also not too much snow, because if you have too much snow there, it is too deep. And there's a video from last season of people off the chair who have all racing to the top to get the first power lines, except there's about 20 people trying to break trail just to be able to go down, and they don't get very far. But sorry, and saying that in terms of Seki as a resort, phenomenal place. It's actually the oldest ski resort in Japan, which is pretty crazy.
Do you know how that came to be?
I actually don't know, but I know the family is they've just run it for fun most of the time.
You get that feeling when you go there. Yeah.
But it's 2 lifts. It's got the double chair at the bottom and then a pizza box chair at the top, which is single chair. When you go there, you get your lift ticket, and the same people giving you your lift ticket because you can choose the lift ticket to include lunch for about 4,600 yen, which is pretty cheap, and you'll get a pretty good feed for that. So you'll go up to the restaurant at lunchtime when it stops around 2:00, and it's local mums cooking your lunch, and a lot of them actually have their babies on the back in the kitchen coming out and serving you food, and they always got the biggest smiles, which is
and it's all these things that sells these places.
It's such a unique resort because it's a very local community vibe up there, and you can really feel the energy up at Seki. And as far as the resort goes, if people have ridden in Hakuba, it's like a miniature version of Cortina. It's got a lot of, for how small it is, it has a lot of tree riding, and you'll go there on a pow day. In my opinion, the best time to go there is when it's had 20 to 50 centimeters. There's a nice amount of snow there. Friends have been there in 1.20 meters, and it's not worth going skiing because you can't get anywhere very fast. But you'll only have 30 to 50 people there on a good day because people just don't know about how good it actually is.
A lot of locals as well, right?
A lot of locals, but you'll get to halfway through the day and you would have smashed out 20 laps, and it's a pretty short chair. So it's phenomenal.
So Billy, the resorts are in pretty close proximity. What's the story with ticketing? Like, is there one pass that covers all the resorts?
No, there's the Mount Myoko pass, which has the 4 resorts on it. And that's Suginohara, Ikenotaira, Akakura, Kanko, and Akakura Onsen. And then the Seki pass is separate to that.
In terms of moving around the resorts, how do you do that?
So if you're staying in Akakura, you're within walking distance to Onsen and Kanko. You don't need a bus for that, but there is a bus facility in town that'll bring you out to the other 2 resorts, Ikenotaira and Suginohara. And I believe they're growing the infrastructure there, hopefully, because there's been a bit of feedback from the local community.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Plus also a great place to rent your own car if you are going to stay, for example, and make the most of all the resorts. It's another option for people if you want that bit.
Yeah, I would say if you're coming to Myoko and you have a means, if you're staying at one of the ryokans, or a lot of places will have parking for you to be able to rent your car from, say, Tokyo or Nagano. If you are coming to Myoko, definitely have a 4-wheel drive with snow tires, because friends of mine came out last year and had 2-wheel drive without snow tires, and they're a hazard. So, if you're listening, have definitely come out with a car. It'll make your life a bit easier.
Especially if you're renting the car in Tokyo or somewhere else, mention that to them where you're going. Yeah, and make sure they put those winter tires on. If you don't, you're going to regret.
It's not going to go well.
And the final thing to mention, actually, even though it's not officially part of Myoko Kogen, is the resort Lotte Arai. So Lotte Arai was an older resort that shut down for a few years and reopened about 5 years ago, possibly. I can't quite remember. It's quite a large resort. It advertises itself as a 200 hectares, which is significantly larger than any of the other resorts here. But I think that takes into account some of the off-piste areas and things like that. I've never boarded there, but have you spent time at Lotte? And again, how would you rate that?
I really, really enjoy Lotte. It is very close to the coast, so it gets a lot of snow. I'm pretty sure that's where the 22 meters was recorded, not this previous season. 2022 season. It was taken over. I believe it's the Korean owned now who are running it, and they have a Canadian ski patrol team who are looking after avalanche safety. Part of the reason it was shut down for so long was because they had so many avalanche deaths there. So you go to Lotte, it's very well patrolled. If it's roped off, don't duck the ropes. It's got a fantastic gondola that'll take you up as well as the lifts. And it's got some very, very good powder riding. As far as tree riding, it's not as much as the other resorts, so you do need some better weather to be riding there, I would say, to have a bit more visibility, because trees give good depth perception. But it's a very well-run resort.
What's it like on piste?
Lotte Arai does have a lot of piste riding. I haven't been there in a while to give a proper feedback of how it rides through like really deep snow, but it does have pretty long runs that'll take you to the base. But the upper part of the mountain I find is quite steep, so I would say you'd need to be a higher ability to comfortably ride that. But it does have a lot of terrain to be able to host a lot of people there and really tune through a lot of numbers.
Yeah, and a very different setup, right? Because unlike the other Myoko resorts, it's mostly little lodges in terms of accommodation. Lotte has a very large kind of all-inclusive hotel.
Yes. Yeah. So, you get there and you feel like you're in a different part of the world, I think. So I think as far as powder riding, it's a phenomenal place to go and ride. But as like to feel like you're in Japan in a resort, I don't think it really covers that ground, because it's all very modern.
It's very Disneyfied.
Yes.
You know?
But I do think there's a few people around town who are starting to offer other accommodation in the area, a little bit out away from the resort, but a lot closer than, say, staying in Akakura.
Billy, I discovered you through your film As Above, So Below, made by, is it Gordy Duff?
Gordy Duff, yep.
Really well made film, and I think it captures the atmosphere and the spirit of Myoko and life in the snow country. So how did that film come about?
So me and Gordy met a couple years ago now, or maybe it was just over a year, through a friend in New Zealand who's also a filmmaker. We had spoken. We had a lot in common actually, and he hadn't been to Japan before, and he's an up and coming filmmaker in New Zealand. And I said, "You've got to come over to Japan and check it out." And he's very spontaneous, Gordy. He's like, "Right, I'm on it," and he booked a flight to come over in February. And we wanted to do something around the lodge, just showcasing the unique area that they're in, and what people can experience in Myoko, and also a way that to get out of doing their day-to-day life, whether that's leaving what they're doing in their job and that, and come and do what we're doing here.
Yeah, well, it's beautifully shot, and I think it's two things I really liked about it. Well, three things actually. Firstly, how you spoke. And I thought, because the way you spoke, it really reflected the fact that you're part of the community here and wanting to promote that this is a place where you come and be part of a community.
Yes.
I think it's important. Secondly, I think also you mentioned about how you, in terms of prioritizing things that you love, the value in doing that in life, which I think is a very simple message, but a really important one. But also, and then it showed off what daily life is like when clearing the snow and all these things that either you love or you don't love.
Yeah.
I think someone who obviously enjoys it, and I think it's a fantastic way to live. But then also it beautifully shows off Myoko, and you show off the backcountry and the tree riding that you do here. So let's talk about that. I mean, we've already touched on backcountry, and what's the backcountry like in Myoko, and what would you have to say for anyone who's coming here for that reason?
First of all, anyone coming to Myoko to ride backcountry, if you are looking to get out of the resort or off the piste, I would recommend you must have your avalanche safety equipment, so beacon shovel probe. And if you are getting out of, people will say, the tree riding can very quickly turn into side country, which is technically backcountry. So if you are getting into that, I would recommend doing a avalanche safety training course, which will give you the skills necessary to go out into the backcountry, and not to go out into the backcountry alone. But yes, definitely come to Myoko. We have some phenomenal backcountry, very accessible. If you are coming out, I'd recommend bringing a split board over snowshoes, but definitely snowshoes as a minimum. Otherwise, you're going to be post-holing your way out of places. Yeah, but we have my personal favorite would be, like I mentioned earlier, Suginohara, and going up onto the crater to ride down into the base of Mount Myoko,
which I think you show off in the film.
Yes,
right?
Yeah. I did Gordy came up as well, and me and two other buddies rode down into the crater, and then we also hiked up Mount Myoko, which was south. We rode a south aspect, and the views are phenomenal up there.
I'll make sure to include the video on the episode page for today's episode, so make sure to check that out. It really is beautiful. And as I mentioned, we're speaking today in your lodge, the greenhouse here in just down below Suginohara. Can you tell me about the lodge itself? Like when you open, who are you catering to?
Yeah, so myself and my business partner, Nick, we met a few years ago, also his wife, Jessica. We all envisioned providing a place that would be a great place for people to come as a group who wanted to focus their trip around riding amazing powder snow, as well as experiencing the culture and the food and Myoko, and really try and get people together for the same reasons, who weren't focused around, going to the bar and, having too much of a good time to not be able to go out and do those things. But we cater to, we are doing booking, like full group bookings for the lodge. Last season we had a few friends coming and staying as a bit of a trial year. We'll be open just for Christmas and catering for groups of about 8 to 14 people. It's a full book out situation. There can be a car provided in the costs of the lodge, so people can get around a bit easier. If you don't want to use the car with the lodge, I would recommend hiring a car when you come out here. We've got a full kitchen in use, so you can save a bit of time and money by going out and trying to have breakfast every day, or if you want to stay home and have a cozy night in, you can cook dinner at home. It's only a 5-minute drive away to Ikenotaira. We've got some great restaurants around there. One of my personal favorites, Sugumi, and they have a massive onsen within the premise. So it's a great spot to go and have an onsen and then go for a nice meal afterwards.
Yeah. Oh, and this pocket of Myoko is beautiful. As I mentioned, first time I've driven down into this little, shall we call it a hamlet down here today. And lovely. Just so scenic. Obviously, it's awesome. Now we've got the awesome leaves outside the window. All the rice is being harvested. Just a magic part of the world. So, yeah, just fantastic. And in terms of other services you provide here for any guest, do you provide like backcountry tours, anything like this?
Yes. So we're actually launching Myoko Guiding Company. So we're going to have guiding services available for those coming into town who want to get out and learn about the backcountry and do it safely. So we're curating that at the moment. But as a launch for the company, we're going to be doing an avalanche, the AST1 course on the 9th of January until the 11th. 3 days. We can provide that in English and Japanese. And we're going to have 8 spots there. But we are going to have a system where people are going to be able to book a guide for the day to take them around not just Myoko but other surrounding areas if that was of interest to them as well. Yeah. So places like Marorao and Tangram and also Shiga.
Fantastic. And so anyone who's interested in either staying at the greenhouse or the guiding services that are in the pipeline, what's the best way to get in touch?
So we're still curating other means to do that, but our website is tenoshitours.com, and you can put inquiries in there, and we'll have Instagram. You can reach us on the greenhouse or Tenoshi Corp, and we're going to have the Myoko Guiding Company being launched very soon. So that'll be on Instagram and Facebook.
Fantastic. And again, in the episode page and show notes for today, I'll include links to all of those. Billy, just to take us back to the film before As Above, So Below, one of the things you talk about in that film that I thought was really interesting, kind of grabbed my attention, was the kind of meditative process almost you're talking about. And as I mentioned, putting what you love first and the value of community. These are all things that kind of resonated with one of the reasons I started this podcast was to encourage people to not just visit these areas, but to come and be part of these communities, because they are, up until now, have been struggling with the population, everyone getting a bit older. And so I got the feeling that one of the reasons I wanted to get in contact with you was that was part of the message of your film, was also saying those things. So am I right in saying that, you found a very special part of the world here, that you're very happy here, but you also want others to discover what you've discovered?
Yeah, I think the biggest reason I came out here and the message I wanted to get across in the film, like you just mentioned, I had this chat with someone recently and was like, why do you love snowboarding so much? And I think the biggest thing for me is, and I'm sure we can all relate, is most of us struggle to be present in our lives. And snowboarding's, and there are other things, but it's the one thing, as soon as I strap the board on, I can really hone in and actually be present and block out, all that noise that we can get from our busy lives, in the cities and our jobs and things like that. So I definitely encourage people to find that, what makes them present, and focus on that. And also, if something like this was of interest to you, anyone can do it. You just have to give it a red hot crack and come out here and give it a go.
Yeah, I really love that message. Because one thing I really respect people like yourself is people who, it'd be very easy to come and find these little special parts of the world and be very protective and territorial and I don't want anyone else. And, occasionally you do come across those people. And so anyone who doesn't do that, who comes out and finds their place where they're happy, but also wants others to come. I really respect that message. On that note, and I think a good place to kind of wrap up the interview, is the recent reports of potential development of Myoko to the tune of $1.4 billion. So they've just hit the media now, and they're kind of now all over the media. A investor who has bought up some property around Myoko and other ski resorts, and then I believe is now looking to raise the capital to fund all the development, with a vision to rival Niseko and Hokkaido or Hakuba, or even some comparisons to Aspen. To throw a big question at you, what are your thoughts on that?
It's a big risk, I think, to a place like Myoko, having spent time in Hakuba and seen where it can go. And I think one of the biggest things I would be worried about here is losing the culture in Myoko, and also creating a division between Japanese and foreign relationship. And another problem I can see is the culture of skiing and snowboarding, which is my biggest fear, because there's nothing worse than going to a big resort where the primary focus can be money, and the spirit of snowboarding and skiing can dissipate pretty quickly. But I do also see the positive, where it can bring, new infrastructure to the surrounding area. But I just hope that the relationships are well looked after, to be able to preserve the culture and that around Japan, and also look after the existing community, because this is still their home. And we're slowly becoming a part of it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. But I guess something which somebody might respond with and say, well, you guys are just doing exactly what you criticize, being territorial. You don't want others to come.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a few feelings like that. And like, having spoken to a few locals, like, people are nervous about the money coming into town. They are happy for the business element of it, where, it's great for business, for people having foreigners coming and staying in their accommodations or servicing the hospitality industry, but it's also up to all of us to do exactly what I just said and, not focus on the money aspect, but actually why we came here in the first place. And that's, well, for myself, that's the culture and the skiing and snowboarding.
Right, mate. Well said. Billy, I think perfect place to end it. So, mate, thank you so much for your time today. Looking forward to getting this episode online because I think it's going to be a big interest to people. As I mentioned, the lodge is the greenhouse here at the base of Suginohara. I'll include your links on the episode page and show notes. So, guys, don't hesitate to get in contact with Billy about a stay here at the greenhouse or the other services they're going to be providing. Mate, all the best for the season to come.
Awesome. Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
That's it for today. A very big thank you to Billy for chatting with me, showing me around the greenhouse, and sharing all of the images I've used for today's episode. As mentioned, make sure to check out the episode page on the Snow Country Stories Japan website, which includes Billy's film As Above, So Below, and links to the greenhouse, Instagram, and Tanashi Tours website. In terms of getting to Myoko Kogen, express buses operate in winter from the Tokyo airports, that's Narita and Harada, taking around 7 and 5.5 hours respectively. Alternatively, and more appealingly for me, you can also make the journey by train by using the Hokuriku Shinkansen from Tokyo Station to Nagano Station, a journey of between 80 to 110 minutes depending on which service you choose, and then once at Nagano, switching to the local Kita Shirano line onto Myoko Kogen Station, another 50 minutes. For guests choosing to stay at the guest house, they can arrange pick-up for you from Myoko Kogen Station, including the option of a car provided as part of your accommodation. If you have questions about that, please get in touch with Billy to discuss. As always, thank you very much to everyone who is listening, and if you haven't already, I'd love for you to subscribe to, share, rate, and review the podcast. It really helps with the podcast apps picking it up and promoting it to potential listeners. The Snow Country Stories Japan website is just snowcountrystories.com, and you can follow the show on Instagram, Facebook, and X by searching Snow Country Stories Japan. My name is Peter Carnell. This has been Snow Country Stories Japan. I'll be back with the next episode from the Snow Country in a couple of weeks' time. Until then, it's bye for now.